All right. Sanju Verma is countering you. Sanju Verma.
COVID हुआ ही नहीं भाई.
Now please, I need to remind Sanjay Jha that, I am a full-fledged economist. I'm not a wannabe economist like him. And these are some data points for you. It took 6 decades. Please keep quiet. अभी चुप हो जाइए. ध्यान से सुनिए. ध्यान से सुनिए. शांत हो जाइए. शांत हो जाइए. शांत हो जाइए. ध्यान से सुनिए. Don't be so rattled. शांत हो जाइए. शांत हो जाइए. Navika, can you please ask this man to hold his horses? ठीक है, चलिए बोलते रहिए. बोलते रहिए. When you're done, I will speak.
Dr. Sanjay Jha. Dr. Sanjay Jha. Allow the lady to speak. Let her counter you on points.
Thank you.
On facts.
Yes. Mr. Suspended Variety, now hold your horses. Let me come in.
Sanju Verma ji, ये भी बड़ी problem है. You needle him and then you expect him to be quiet. How is that possible?
मैंने सच्चाई बोली है. What is needling? What is the needling bit in this, Navika ji? ठीक है. Now let me come in. अरे भाई साहब, शांत हो जाइए. Navika, it took 6 decades for India to become a $1 trillion economy. In 2015-16, the overall size of India's economy was $2.2 trillion. Today, the size of the economy is roughly $3.8 trillion, which means that in the last 6 or 7 odd years alone, we have grown by 73%. That is point number 1. Point number 2, I was listening to some speaker on your show in the morning, and I heard him say that there is the base effect which is at play. Okay, I agree. We came out of a pandemic. The GDP growth had plummeted during 2020-21. But for 3 years in a row, last year we grew at 7.2%. The year before that we grew at 9.1%. In the first half of the current financial year, we've grown at 7.7%. We are likely to grow at 7% plus in FY25 also. The limited point is this. After coming out of 2 black swan events, the COVID pandemic, the worst pandemic in over 100 years, and another black swan event, namely the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Show me one economy, the size of India's population, which for the last 4 years has grown on an average at 7.5% plus, with inflation in the last 9.5 years limited to 5.4%. The highest inflation was in April 2022 at 7.89%. Whereas even countries like US, UK, Germany, which struggled for decades to have 2% inflation, saw inflation skyrocketing to 10%, 11%, what have you. So the limited point I'm making is, despite facing global headwinds, we had so many tailwinds working to our advantage because the Modi government has never engaged in incrementalism. We've always gone in for structural reforms, whether it was overhauling the direct taxation or bringing in GST on 1st of July 2017, which
Fair
could not happen.
Fair point. And let me ask Prasenjit. Prasenjit, isn't it true that the FRBM Act was actually enacted by the UPA government but notified by this government? Whether it was the direct tax code, it was something that was in the works in the UPA Sarkar, notified by this Sarkar.
There's no direct tax code, period. They scrapped the proposals.
No, FRBM was enacted by the Vajpayee, during the Vajpayee government. It was the it was the UPA government which implemented it, and then
it wasn't notified.
No. It was notified by the UPA government after it came.
That it will come into impact 3 or 4 years later.
Wait. No, what?
Give the year.
I'm telling you, hear me out. The UPA 2 government, especially after the financial crisis, put a pause button when Pranab Mukherjee was finance minister. Then this government came, Arun Jaitley ji reduced the fiscal deficit. But then
that is the time when the opposition, when the opposition said, Rajiv Mantri, that they have to inject and spend.
No, wait.
Give stimulus package.
Abhijit Banerjee to Arvind Subramanian to Raghuram Rajan.
थोड़ा सुन लीजिए.
देखिए,
fiscal deficit जो है, वो दोनों चीज से बनता है. One is you reduce expenditure and you increase your revenues. So I think that there is no harm which this government has done in terms of increasing expenditure. That is not my criticism at all. I think they have done a good thing by increasing capital expenditure To whatever extent it is benefiting the economy.
My God.
Yes, no, but what?
Can we order the Oscars? Can we order the Oscars?
Hear me out.
Something positive.
Let me, of course, no. Why shouldn't I say something positive if there is a positive? But now you have the negative. When the question of fiscal deficit is coming, you look at, Madam just made an important point, that the buoyancy for income tax collection is very good. What about the buoyancy for corporate tax collection? And this is the point I want to draw your viewers' attention to, that revenue performance of this government, the entire burden is on the income taxpayers, that is the middle class. Where is the corporate? And you look at the projections, income tax collections for the forthcoming year are going to surpass corporate tax collections.
Was it different in the UPA regime and the regimes before that?
Very different.
Monica?
Very different.
Okay.
And the burden is on GST. I'm sorry.
There was a corporate tax cut which was
Monica is
my friend,
in
spite of cutting the tax rate
My
to 25%, we are getting the same revenue.
My
or more.
friend Monica.
Actually, for me, it doesn't matter UPA, NDA. I think it's about the growth of the country, and for both corporate and income tax, we've seen tax buoyancy. Corporate taxes have grown from 15% of the budget to 17%. Income tax from 15 to 19%. Yes, personal taxes have grown more. But on one side, we are saying you need incentives for the corporate sectors to start the investment cycle. So look at this.
Corporate should be taxed heavily, and they should also create jobs, and they should also do investment. Corporate should do everything.
Please.
But PSUs should have no accountability.
Dr. Mehrul.
Let them keep burning the taxpayers' funds.
Dr. Mehrul.
May I? 4 or 5 points very briefly. We've just been told how high the tax buoyancy is. You know, for 30 years, since our economic reforms began, when our growth rate really perked up, the tax to GDP ratio has not grown. The tax to GDP ratio has not grown, which means that the buoyancy has been one. It is not buoyant, firstly. It was 17.5% in 1992. It is still 17.5%. This is the opposite of what was happening in what are called the now rich countries. If we want to become rich, the size of the state has to grow. That means the tax to GDP. Excuse me, may I finish? I haven't interrupted. I didn't interrupt you. Unless we continue to collect more taxes, we cannot spend more effectively. Let me give you my second point, and it shows in the budget document which we have just been told about. The data is showing very clearly that health expenditure, which was promised in the national health policy to go from 1.1% of GDP in 2017 by this government, which was to rise by 2024 to 2.5%, it is still at 1.3%. There's been a mere 3% in real terms increase in health. In education, the new education policy itself says that we should go to 6%. What was it in UPA? It was 4% of GDP in education. In this government, it has consistently been below 3% of GDP, 2.9% of GDP. Third point, I'm sorry, my numbers are... Excuse me, let me finish.
Okay, you are being challenged on your numbers. Okay.
This is not some Karl Marx. No, excuse me. I haven't. I have to challenge him on.
Your numbers are being counted. If the numbers are being counted, then we count.
No, his labor force numbers were wrong. Here, I have to first counter him on the labor force, female labor force numbers.
Dr. Mehrotra, allow him.
So
can we have a cogent debate out here?
Yes.
On personal tax to GDP, we have been consistently rising.
Yes.
It's been consistently going up.
Total tax to GDP, understand the difference between personal income tax.
No. So even direct tax to GDP has more than trebled in the last 10 years. The total direct tax corpus.
Yes, sir. I'm saying what I'm saying. The total tax to GDP ratio.
If there was a corporate tax reform,
please try and understand that all
if there's a corporate tax reform and a tax cut was given,
excuse me.
You can dispute.
I have nothing to dispute.
No.
The facts are on the table. It's very simple.
You are just cherry picking things.
The point here is
yes, there will be a decline, but the objective of giving a corporate tax cut is to incentivize investment.
You don't want the tax cut. But where is the investment tax cut?
Where's
Where
the
is that
investment?
My friend,
See, you have to be
friend,
comparative in the world. You can't have a 35 to 37%
you know,
tax
it's
rate.
elementary, my dear
You want
Watson.
to and
when
what
you wanted investments to come in, 1 minute. When you wanted investments to come in, there was a COVID. There has been a slowdown. It will happen. It will pay its dividends,
So
my
it's a
friend.
post-dated
So up.
It's a
And
post-dated
you are
check.
asserting that the state
The
has to grow.
point
No, the
is,
state does not
the
have to grow.
point
We
is,
have given the tax incentive.
I think
India to
you're
become
missing.
Venezuela.
I think
India to become
No,
Venezuela.
no, I think you're
statement
missing
saying
the
you
woods
you
for
made a
the
statement
trees.
saying the
You're
state has
missing
to
the
grow, which
woods
is
for the
wrong.
trees at the moment simply because there have been force majeure that happens. And that has kicked in when COVID happened, and across the world, we've seen that impacting economies.